money mentor. We'll get started in just a moment. I just love this sound. This sound. This sound. This sound. Maybe grab a beverage and relax with me as we continue on this week and talk about financial freedom for young people, inspired in part by a comment that I had recently from a young person that asked me the question, what can I do to get started? I'm a young person. I think he said he was in high school. He or she said they were in high school. I'm not sure. They just said they were young, if memory serves me correctly. And so I love talking to young people about money. I really do. And as I said over the past week or so, if I can just, influence one person to make the right choices over time, then my job on this channel will be complete. My life's work will be complete. I'm getting a little dramatic, aren't I? Anyway, so welcome to Friday. I hope you all had a great week. So excited for the weekend. Of course, now I'm retired. I don't know if I get excited for weekends anymore because every day is the weekend when you have financial freedom. So remember, I'm looking at my pieces of paper where I've got a bunch of scribbles. I should really scribble more. It's a good ASMR thing, isn't it? Let me see. Relax. 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 Money, money, money. Money. Yes, I know I'm weird. People tell me all the time. Well, no, they don't really, because nobody knows I have this channel, by the way. Not in the real world. This is the fake world of ASMR. It's fake, meant to be kind of fantasy-like with the hat and all, and the lighting and the colors, but I think it's a nice direct contrast to how simple really financial freedom can be for people. Because let's face it, okay? Let me just tell you how it is, okay? Let me just, give you the truth at this moment. Your lifetime is going to be a very long time. If you're a young person right now, if you're a teenager, if you're, about to turn 20 or somewhere in there, just think about it. You've got your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe your 60s where you're going to be working. That's 4 to 5 decades. That's a long time. Most people take those decades and squander them all away and spend everything they make. And then they jobs because of my family did some things and I had to live up to somebody else's expectation. Or I spent all this money because I was in love with somebody and they made me do it. No. You need to stop and look in the mirror and say that you can create whatever destiny you want for yourself. Always have that in the top of your mind. Don't let anybody take that from you. You deserve it. And financial freedom and wealth building really has little to do with how much you make over those 40 to 50 years. It has more to do with what you keep of what you make and how you keep your expenses low. And when you do that, a wonderful thing happens, and it's called financial freedom. Expenses are low, income goes up, and what do? You save and invest the difference. It's really that simple. So don't blame anybody for your lack of knowledge. It's going to be up to you to learn about what personal finance is all about. And I hope that you are learning a lot from my channel as we move forward. And so let's segue into the content of today's episode, which is really talking more about show me the money. So I'd like to take a few minutes really today and just talk through what I did. And I do have a few notes, scribbled here, but it's almost like I don't even have to look at my notes because I lived those years and I can tell you exactly what I did, and it was very, 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 very simple. Remember I said the other day, don't let anybody ever tell you that building wealth is difficult. It's not. Yes, you're still going to have an income. You have to do some work. You're going to have to, it's not going to be easy. I didn't say it was easy. But it is not difficult. There's a difference. So, obviously, I'm speaking to those of you that are very young. You're going to get some jobs in the future, right? Maybe you went to college, maybe you didn't. So again, the income really has not much to do with your ability to do well with money. Do not blame the fact that you don't make much money. You might have to have 2 jobs. I had 2 jobs for 10 years back in my 30s. So, obviously, the basics are things like, compounding interest. If you're able to start investing while you were younger, then that compounding effect over time, as you know, is going to be huge in terms of the amount of money you'll be able to accumulate based on the growth. When you look at my horizon, and I think I have an episode on this, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but of the 1.6 million that I have, I think that of that number, half of it was my income from my job. But if you start like when you're 25 rather than 40, then maybe it's a third, or maybe even less than that, a fourth of your money, because most of it will be growth. Does that make sense? It should. Because I started so much later, I had to sacrifice and save more, but I was okay with that. I made the mistakes when I was younger. I got older and I got smarter, so I had to save 50, 60, ultimately 70% of my income. I saved 70% for 5 years because I was behind the 8 ball. Okay, so if you start now investing, not saving but investing, then so much better. However, you're going to have to first have very little to no debt. Some of you might have debt right now, or you're thinking about, hopefully you don't have debt yet if you're really young. Don't be enticed by, credit card offers and things like that. Do not get into debt. I want to pause here for just a minute. One of the comments on my channel recently was something to do with when I did a budget as a role play. Somebody said something about you forgot credit cards, and most people these days have credit cards. But you know what? Here's what. I didn't respond to that, but I thought about it, and don't be thinking about minimum payments on credit cards as a line item in your budget. The credit card is just where you put money that was in your budget to begin with as another line item. If you're going to think that, you know, this $100 that I'm sending to the credit card company every month is a line item, then you're missing the bigger picture. You have to back up, reel it in a little bit, because if you don't have debt, then that means you're paying off your debt every single month, which is what you should do. So really, the line items are things that you need, that you just happen to put on a credit card temporarily, and then you pay it off at the end of the month. Okay, I went off on a tangent there, but, you know, as a young person, again, the compounding interest is what you need to know, and the sooner you can start investing, the better. But first, you have to get your debt paid down, right? You have to make sure you have an emergency fund, maybe 3 months, you know, you guys know this. 3 months, 6 months of whatever, set that aside. Then you can start investing. What you do every year is you build your budget from your in money, your out money for the entire year to know, are you surviving or thriving? You're surviving if you can pay all of your expenses and give yourself a little fun money. You're thriving if you can pay off your expenses, pay your expenses, have a little fun money, but also invest. So you may have a few extra $1,000 in your budget someday where you're going to be like, okay, I kept my expenses down. I'm paying myself a little bit of fun money. And I have a line item. Maybe it's $3,000. Maybe it's $4,000. Maybe in the beginning it's only $500. That's fine. Maybe it's $100. You can open up a Roth IRA is what I like to encourage people to do after you have already hopefully contributed to the match on a 401k, if you have a 401k. Like I had a 401k, so I matched that, I put the percent to get the company match, which was 6%. Then a few years go by and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to open up the Roth IRA. I did that in 2006. It took me a while to max that out, total dollar amounts. Then I went back to the 401k a few years later because I'm like, all right, I'm still doing that, and now I'm putting money over here. Then you max out your 401k if you have one. Then suddenly you get to a point in your life where you're maxing out those vehicles, and what are they again? Your 401k. The government says you can put so much in a 401k, so you need to know those numbers. Google it, right? It'll say X amount of dollars. What if it's 15,000? Let's say, I don't even know what it is right now because I was doing catch-up contributions. But because once you're over 50, you can put in more. But your goal is to try to max out all of that, and that might take you several years. Go live your life, have fun. But as you're doing that, then every year you reevaluate. You figure out, based on your budget, do you have anything left over? So eventually you'll get to a point where I did, where you open up a taxable account. See, what happened was, I'm like, okay, I said to myself, Evan, you're maxing out your Roth, you're maxing out your 401k. Then in 2016, I had extra money after doing those things, still building that wealth, right? I was like, oh, I don't want to go spend it on fun or anything. I didn't need to put more in my emergency fund. So I opened up another account, a taxable account. And then the money you can put in a taxable account is unlimited. Not like these other government-sponsored programs that you may be involved with. You can continue you as you get raises to put more money into that taxable account, either dollar cost average in every month, or maybe a lump sum at the end of the year once you see how well you closed your year. Now, that's it. If you have a health savings account, then you can open up a health savings account if you have a high deductible healthcare plan. I call those my fabulous four, and I did that for 18, 20 years. Now, don't confuse the vehicle, which I just talked about, 401k, Roth IRA, taxable account, health savings account. Don't confuse the vehicle with the investments that live inside of those vehicles. What I chose were low-cost index funds that ride the market of the S&P 500. The S&P 500 are 500 of the largest companies in the country. What's good about saving money in this fashion is that you really don't have to know a lot about the individual companies per se, because when you invest in a mutual fund, whether it be an exchange-traded fund or a mutual fund, you're putting money into those funds, and they invest it into those companies that are part of the fund. So it's well diversified in and of itself. I didn't want to spend too much time, figuring all that out. So the easiest path for me was to just put money into any type of index funds that ride the market. So you could get some help from your custodian, from your 401k. I like the low-cost ones, again, that have a low expense ratio. An expense ratio is just the amount of money that's charged to the mutual fund that you don't even really see. I think I shared with you guys on my channel recently that my company that I used to be with is moving us into Fidelity as a 401k. So I'm leaving at Fidelity. I'm currently in a Vanguard 2025 index fund. It's called a target fund, which means it's well balanced with stocks and bonds. That means that has to do with asset allocation, right? You have stocks and bonds. Bonds are more income producing assets. Stocks are more risky, but you can make more money. So a lot of times you have a little bit of both. And they're moving that Vanguard fund into a, believe it or not, it's a T. Rowe Price fund, which I found interesting. A target fund of 2025. Now that expense ratio was like 0.003 or 4, I think, whereas sometimes at Vanguard the expense ratio is like 0.001. Or I'm actually considering maybe moving my money into index funds with Fidelity, because I understand there's 0% as an expense ratio. So that's something I'll be looking into. But an expense ratio, again, is what is charged within that fund itself to own it. Not to be confused with, like, you don't want to probably get into funds that have a fee. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a fee that they charge you in addition to that. I stayed away from all of that, and again chose index funds that are relatively inexpensive to own. So if the S&P 500 goes up, then your portfolio goes right along with it. And so, again, you've got your vehicles. That's where you're going to put your money. But then you also have to consider what investments you want to put that money in, and just talk to some people about it. Again, a good place to go would be your custodian with your 401k, if you have a 401k. You can also hire financial people, and I would probably encourage people to do more, not assets under management per se. It's called AUM, but if you want to talk to a financial person, you can charge. They usually charge an hourly rate to give you advice around where to put that money. Now, I will say, as a person that really coaches more people with money management and not, investing and such, in my lifetime of building that 1.6 million, I I never really gave my money to some company and said, hey, go invest it for me. I think that people can kind of do it on their own because it's so easy. A book that you might want to read is J.L. Collins' The Simple Path to Wealth. And he talks about everything that I talk about in the financial independence space, which is slow and steady. Just continue to invest. You don't need a big fancy advisor to charge a bunch of money to make them think that there's value there, because studies show that if you just invest in these index funds, you're going to do far better over time than if you give your money to somebody and pay 1% for them to invest it for you. 1% per year, actually. You don't want that, in my opinion, and I never did that either. However, let me tell you that I also, though, with Vanguard, 3 years ago, I did sign up for their advisory services for my Roth IRA and my taxable account, which they currently manage. But they only charge me 0.003%. It's really small, and I've been able to call and talk to financial advisors there. Like whenever I want, I just pick up the phone, I set up an appointment, and I ramble with them about my thoughts and what I want to do with my money and such, and then they say yay or nay. But they also, under management, put the money into the best index funds that they felt. But here's what I'm going to do, and I'll share this with you as we move forward. I'm deciding right now if I'm going to stay with Vanguard or move my money to Fidelity, because this opportunity is going on right now where my company is moving our 401k from Lincoln to Fidelity anyway. I had no choice. I'm going to be considering at the end of January, early February, at that point, sometime in February most likely, to maybe liquidate the funds that they brought over at Fidelity and keep them at Fidelity rather than moving them back to Vanguard. And I'm not going to stress about it because it's really 6 of one, half a dozen of another. It's not a big deal. But what I do know, and I can share this with you, is that I'm not going to be paying for assets under management anymore. I did it for 3 years to get the benefit of talking to advisors, and I learned a lot. But I'm not going to continue that. I mean, because right now those 2 accounts are like 350 to 400,000, but if they're managing 1.45 million, then they're charging me a lot more because it's based on a percentage, even though it could be at 0.003% or whatever, right? Does that make sense? I don't really need it, and that's what's great about learning about personal finance as you guys get older. Kind of to wrap up this episode about the financial component of building wealth, is that you need to become more interested if you're not, and in fact many of you are probably very interested in wealth building, or you would not be here, right? You would not be here listening to me ramble. But every year, as I think I've said multiple times, you look at that year and you make decisions based on what's going on in that year and where you are, how much money you're making, what your expenses are, where are interest rates. You will have to educate yourself a little bit every single year. But then you can kind of go on autopilot throughout the year. Maintain your budget. Make sure you go back to the budget that you built. You reduce the money. You might want to go to my playlist. I have some episodes about building a budget. And once you build that budget, if you have not done so, then you need to work the budget. That's the most important financial component I can share with you, is that you need to work the budget every single week. Look at it. How much money did you spend? Deduct it from your buckets, because it all nets to zero. You can't go wrong and spend more money. You can move the money around, but you can't spend more than you intended to spend. And always keep, as a final thought for you today, that you need to see your savings and investing as an expense. But it's not an expense that you pay to others. It's an expense that you pay to yourself. So with that, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and close out this episode. Thank you again for the person that wrote the comment to to start building financial freedom as a young person. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If so, give me a like. Consider subscribing.